Amid the glitz and glamour of 1990s Los Angeles, Nicole Brown Simpson emerged as an icon of beauty and devotion, a young mother raising two small children, once living in a world of opulence alongside the legendary sports star O.J. Simpson. Yet, behind the seemingly perfect picture lay cracks impossible to conceal: a marriage tainted by control, jealousy, and desperate late-night calls to the police. Then, a chilling detail stunned America. Nicole had repeatedly told police, "He's going to kill me," a haunting warning that became reality just a few years later. What turned a sports legend adored by millions into a suspect in the trial of the century? And why was this case not only a personal tragedy, but one that shook American society to its core? Under the radiant California sun of the 1980s, a love story began like a fairy tale, only to end in tragedy. Nicole Brown Simpson, born in Germany but raised under California's blue skies, embodied the quintessential American beauty, with her golden blonde hair and radiant smile. She captivated those around her with her open and outgoing personality. Friends described Nicole as a woman who loved life, always brimming with energy and possessing the ability to make anyone feel special. As a mother to her two young children, Sydney and Justin, Nicole was devoted, always putting her children first. She shielded them, striving to create a warm and peaceful family environment, even as her personal life grew increasingly complicated. Alongside Nicole's gentle image stood O.J. Simpson, a sports star known across America by his affectionate nickname, The Juice. O.J. Simpson was not just an exceptional football player, but a true sports icon. His illustrious career with the Buffalo Bills made him a living legend, with breathtaking breakaway runs that had millions of fans rising to their feet in cheers. After retiring, O.J. didn't rest on his laurels. He transitioned into an actor, appearing in films and commercials. His handsome face and charming smile won over Hollywood to the American public. O.J. Simpson was the epitome of a successful black man, overcoming barriers to achieve the American dream. Their fateful meeting occurred when Nicole was just 18, working as a waitress at a Beverly Hills nightclub. O.J., then a 35-year-old national star, was instantly drawn to the youthful beauty of the young woman. Despite the stark differences in age and social status, they quickly fell deeply in love. Their 1985 marriage was seen as a modern fairy tale. They lived in a luxurious Brentwood mansion in Los Angeles, enjoying a life of wealth and fame. However, behind the glossy magazine photos and glamorous events, a darker story was unfolding, one of control, jealousy, and violence that would gradually come to light. The social context of the era was equally significant. Los Angeles in the 1990s was rife with racial tensions, particularly following the 1992 Rodney King riots. Inequality and racial discrimination remained burning issues, creating a deeply divided society that this case would painfully reflect. The first signs of the storm to come appeared early in their relationship. When Nicole was still young and inexperienced in love, she failed to recognize behaviors that would later be identified as warning signs of a toxic relationship. O.J. Simpson, despite his charming and successful exterior, harbored an intense need for control. From the early days of their acquaintance, he began displaying a tendency to dominate every aspect of Nicole's life. This was not the typical concern of a loving partner, but a systematic and escalating form of control. Cynthia Garvey, a close friend of Nicole's, shared painful memories of this period. O.J. didn't like Nicole going out with friends. He always wanted to know where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing. Once, "We just went for coffee and came back a little late," and O.J. flew into a terrifying rage. He screamed in Nicole's face, accusing her of disrespecting their family. These controlling behaviors gradually escalated. O.J. began monitoring Nicole's phone calls, checking who had called her and what they had discussed. He would frequently show up unannounced at places where Nicole was, as if keeping tabs on her. When Nicole asked why he was there, O.J. always had plausible excuses, but the coincidences happened too often to be random. Despite these red flags, Nicole decided to marry O.J. in 1985. She may have believed that marriage would make him feel more secure, reducing his controlling tendencies. However, the reality was the opposite. Marriage only intensified O.J.'s sense of ownership over Nicole. O.J.'s controlling behavior soon turned into physical violence. Most alarmingly, these incidents were frequent. During their marriage from 1985 to 1992, Los Angeles police were called to their Brentwood home at least 9 times due to reports of domestic violence. This number only reflects the instances when Nicole actually called the police or someone else reported it, meaning the actual number of violent incidents was likely much higher. New Year's Eve 1989 marked a pivotal moment in their relationship, the first time O.J.'s violence became public knowledge. On the last night of the year, as the world prepared to welcome the new year, a heated argument erupted in their lavish Brentwood mansion. The exact cause of the dispute remains unclear, but the outcome was clear and horrific. Around 3 a.m. on January 1, 1989, Nicole called 911, her voice trembling with fear. When police arrived, they found her hiding in the bushes in front of the house, wearing only a torn nightgown. Her face was covered in bruises, her lip was split, and there were signs of strangulation. The image of Nicole in this state was photographed by the police and later became critical evidence. "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me," Nicole sobbed to the officers when they found her. These words were not the exaggerations of a panicked woman, but a genuine warning from someone who had experienced extreme fear. When questioned by police, O.J. Simpson appeared suspiciously calm. He claimed it was just a minor argument and that Nicole had overreacted. He also tried to blame her drinking, saying she was drunk and out of control, despite clear evidence of violence. The justice system handled the incident leniently. O.J. Simpson was charged with simple assault and allowed to plead guilty to a minor offense. He was sentenced to 2 years of probation, 120 hours of community service, and required to attend an anger management course. Additionally, he was fined $700, a negligible amount for someone earning millions. This light punishment sent a dangerous message even when a celebrity brutally abused his wife. The consequences were merely symbolic. This not only failed to deter O.J., but may have emboldened him to believe he could escape accountability for any action. After the New Year's Eve incident, Nicole tried to sustain the marriage. She may have hoped that his arrest and court appearance would prompt O.J. to change. However, the years that followed only saw an escalation of violence and control. In October 1993, about a year after their official divorce, Nicole had to call 911 again for help. This call was recorded and later became a critical part of the case file. In the tense recording, Nicole's trembling voice can be heard reporting that O.J. had been smashing things in her home and threatening to beat me. "He's out there, and I'm afraid he's going to come inside," Nicole told the 911 operator. "He says he's going to beat me, and I'm scared he'll really do it." When police arrived, they found Nicole in a state of panic, sobbing and trembling. She told them O.J. had shown up uninvited, started yelling at her about a phone call she had made, and when she asked him to leave, he began throwing things and threatening violence. An incident in May 1994, just weeks before the murder, revealed the dangerous escalation of O.J.'s behavior. According to reports, he broke into Nicole's home when she wasn't there. When Nicole returned and noticed signs of an intrusion, she called security and then contacted her lawyer. The most terrifying aspect of this incident wasn't that O.J. had entered her home, but that he had been there for an extended period, possibly waiting for her to return. Neighbors later reported seeing O.J.'s car parked near Nicole's house for hours before she came home. June 1994 marked the peak of tension. Nicole made a courageous but dangerous decision to completely end all contact with O.J., except for matters related to co-parenting their children. She told a friend she finally felt she could get away from him and began planning a new, independent life. This decision, though entirely justified and necessary for her safety, triggered O.J.'s deepest fear, being abandoned and losing complete control. For a man accustomed to dominating every aspect of their relationship, Nicole's declaration of independence was an unacceptable threat. In the final weeks of May and early June 1994, O.J. exhibited increasingly erratic and alarming behavior. He repeatedly called Nicole, sometimes late at night. He also frequently drove by her house, sometimes parking there for hours. Nicole's friends urged her to take better protective measures. But everyone hoped O.J. would eventually accept reality and move on. No one could have imagined that instead of accepting it. O.J. Simpson was quietly planning a final, desperate, and brutal Act 1 that would end Nicole's life and forever alter the course of American legal history. In the early morning of June 13, 1994, as the sun rose over Los Angeles, a neighbor walking his dog inadvertently stumbled upon one of the most shocking crime scenes in American history. Şükrü Boztepe, a Turkish man living in the neighborhood, had heard a dog barking incessantly the previous night. When he followed the dog, it led him to 875 Bundy Drive, Nicole Brown Simpson's home. The scene Boztepe witnessed would haunt him for life. At the front entrance of the house, under the dim glow of a streetlight, two bodies lay in a large pool of blood. Nicole was face down near the front window, already deceased. Beside her was Ron Goldman, a young man who worked at the nearby Mezzaluna restaurant. The Los Angeles police arrived at the scene within minutes of the report. What they found was an exceptionally brutal and bloody crime scene. Nicole had been savagely attacked with multiple stab wounds to her head and neck. The most severe injury was a deep slash across her throat, nearly severing her head from her body. The amount of blood indicated the attack was both ferocious and prolonged. Ron Goldman, who appeared to have fought back fiercely, was also stabbed multiple times across his body. The condition of his body and the evidence at the scene suggested he had struggled to defend himself and possibly protect Nicole. Forensic experts later determined that Goldman may have survived for a few minutes after the initial attack, making the incident even more heart-wrenching. From the earliest hours, detectives realized this was not a typical robbery. There were no signs of forced entry, and valuable items in Nicole's home remained untouched. This led to the conclusion that the crime was personal, and the perpetrator likely knew the victims. The crime scene provided a wealth of critical physical evidence, most notably. A blood-stained brown leather glove was found at the scene, later identified as an isotoner brand, size XL. It appeared to have been dropped as the attacker fled. Crucially, a matching glove was also found at O.J. Simpson's home, becoming one of the case's key pieces of evidence. Footprints at the scene also told a significant story. Experts discovered a trail of bloody footprints leading from the crime scene to the back of the house, notably. These footprints indicated the attacker had walked slowly rather than run, as if leaving the scene calmly and deliberately. Technical analysis later confirmed the footprints matched Bruno Magli's shoes, size 12, a rare and expensive brand that O.J. Simpson had owned. DNA evidence became the cornerstone of the investigation. Blood droplets found at various locations painted a clear picture of what had happened. Nicole and Ron's blood was found mixed at the scene, confirming both were attacked at the same location. More significantly, blood evidence showed the attacker had been injured in the left hand during the crime. What shocked detectives was the discovery of O.J. Simpson's blood at the scene. DNA analysis later confirmed with 99.9% accuracy that the blood found at the scene belonged to O.J. Simpson. Furthermore, the blood of all three, Nicole, Ron, and O.J. was found in O.J.'s white Ford Bronco and at his Rockingham residence. The investigation quickly zeroed in on O.J. Simpson when police uncovered his history of domestic violence against Nicole. Detective Mark Furman, one of the first investigators at the scene, decided to go to O.J.'s home to inform him of his ex-wife's death. However, upon arriving, they discovered suspicious signs. At O.J.'s home, police found significant evidence. In addition to the aforementioned glove, they discovered bloodstains on the driveway and in O.J.'s Bronco. Notably, O.J. had a cut on the middle finger of his left hand, consistent with evidence that the attacker was injured during the crime. When questioned about the injury, O.J. gave contradictory explanations. Initially, he claimed he cut himself while cleaning up broken glass at a Chicago hotel, where he had flown on the night of the murder. Later, he changed his story, saying he might have cut himself before going to Chicago but couldn't recall when or how. O.J.'s account of his whereabouts on the night of the murder was also riddled with inconsistencies. He claimed to have been at home during the time of the crime, from 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. on June 12th. However, limousine driver Alan Park, who came to pick O.J. up for the airport, testified that he arrived at O.J.'s house at 10:25 p.m. but received no answer at the door until 10:55 p.m. This created a missing window of time in O.J.'s schedule, sufficient for him to commit the crime and return home. As evidence against O.J. mounted, police decided to arrest him. However, instead of turning himself in as agreed, O.J. fled with his friend Al Cowlings in the white Ford Bronco. This led to one of the most famous televised chases in American history. The highway chase occurred on the afternoon of June 17, 1994, with dozens of police cars trailing the Bronco at a slow speed. O.J. sat in the back seat with a gun to his head, while Cowlings drove and communicated with police via phone, pleading with them not to shoot. Nearly 95 million Americans watched the chase live on television, making it a cultural phenomenon. The chase ended when O.J. finally surrendered at his home, inside the Bronco. Police found a passport, a large amount of cash, a fake beard, and a gun, all suggesting O.J. had planned to flee. This event not only captured global attention, but became a symbol of the case, reflecting the desperation and possible admission of guilt of a man once idolized by millions. The criminal trial of O.J. Simpson, dubbed the trial of the century by the media, officially began on January 24, 1995. From the outset, it was clear this was not just a criminal trial, but a confrontation of perspectives on race, class, and justice in American society. O.J. Simpson's dream team of defense attorneys was led by Johnny Cochran, a skilled and experienced black lawyer, alongside Robert Shapiro, Alan Dershowitz, F. Lee Bailey, and Robert Kardashian. This was a collection of America's top legal minds, each with their own expertise and established reputation. The cost of this team ran into the millions, reflecting O.J.'s determination to defend himself. In contrast, the prosecution team, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, consisted of experienced Los Angeles District Attorney's Office lawyers. Despite their competence, they faced a daunting challenge convincing the jury that a beloved celebrity like O.J. Simpson could commit such a brutal crime. The defense strategy did not focus on proving O.J.'s innocence, but on sowing reasonable doubt about the prosecution's evidence. They understood that in the American justice system, creating sufficient reasonable doubt could secure an acquittal. The core of the defense's strategy was accusing the Los Angeles police of racial bias and fabricating evidence. Detective Mark Furman, who found key evidence at the scene and O.J.'s home, became the primary target of this attack. The defense uncovered audio recordings from years earlier in which Furman used racially offensive language and expressed discriminatory attitudes. When these tapes were played in court, a tense atmosphere enveloped the room. The jury, which included a majority of black members, heard Furman repeatedly use the word nigger and display contempt for the black community. This severely undermined Furman's credibility as a reliable witness. The defense also heavily focused on highlighting errors in the police's evidence collection and handling. They argued that the police failed to follow proper procedures, leading to potential contamination or even fabrication of evidence. Improper sealing of blood samples, failure to store evidence at appropriate temperatures, and allowing multiple people access to the crime scene created gaps that the defense skillfully exploited. The trial's most memorable moment came when the prosecution asked O.J. Simpson to try on the blood-stained glove found at the scene, in a decision later deemed a tactical error. Christopher Darden requested O.J. to put on the glove in front of the jury. The glove appeared not to fit O.J.'s hand, as he struggled to put it on. Johnny Cochran seized this opportunity, delivering one of the most famous lines in American legal history: "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." Although later explanations suggested the glove didn't fit because O.J. was wearing rubber gloves underneath, the leather glove may have shrunk due to dried blood, or O.J. may have intentionally made his hand appear larger. The image left a lasting impression on the jury. The prosecution presented a wealth of scientific and physical evidence to prove O.J.'s guilt, including 99.9% accurate DNA evidence, footprints matching O.J.'s shoes, and a well-documented history of domestic violence. Marcia Clark emphasized Nicole's 911 calls and photos of her injuries from O.J.'s abuse. However, the defense succeeded in complicating the scientific evidence. They brought in their own experts to challenge the DNA analysis, arguing that mishandling had contaminated the samples. They also questioned the accuracy of the footprint comparison and offered alternative explanations for the presence of O.J.'s blood at the scene. Another critical factor in the trial was the media's presence. As one of the first trials to be fully televised, it drew millions of viewers daily. The media attention turned the trial into a form of entertainment, sometimes overshadowing the seriousness of the legal issues. The jury, consisting of 9 black members, 2 white members, and 1 Hispanic member, had to weigh not only the evidence but also the broader social context for many jurors. The case was not just about O.J. Simpson's guilt or innocence, but about trust in the justice system and police, a system that the black community had long distrusted. After 9 months of intense testimony, with hundreds of witnesses and thousands of pieces of evidence presented, the jury took only 4 hours to reach a verdict on October 3, 1995, with the world watching. The verdict was announced. O.J. Simpson was acquitted of murder. The moment the verdict was read became one of the most divisive in American social history. As the court clerk announced not guilty, the public's reaction starkly revealed the deep racial divide in American society. At universities, workplaces, and public spaces where people watched the trial live, 2 starkly different reactions unfolded simultaneously. In black communities, cheers, applause, and celebratory gestures erupted. For them, this was not just O.J.'s victory, but a triumph against a justice system they believed had discriminated against black people for decades. In contrast, white communities were enveloped in stunned silence and disbelief. Many felt justice had been denied, and a murderer had escaped punishment due to his fame and wealth. Post-verdict polls showed 85% of white people believed O.J. was guilty, while 85% of black people believed he was innocent. However, the story didn't end with the criminal trial. The families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman filed a civil lawsuit against O.J. Simpson, unlike the criminal trial. The civil court required only a preponderance of evidence rather than proof, beyond a reasonable doubt, a significantly lower standard. The civil trial, held from 1996 to 1997, yielded a different outcome. The jury, predominantly white and Asian, found O.J. Simpson liable for the deaths of Nicole and Ron Goldman. He was ordered to pay $33.5 million to the victims' families, a massive sum that severely depleted his wealth. The O.J. Simpson case left profound and lasting impacts on American society. Most significantly, it transformed how major trials were covered by the media. As one of the first trials to be fully televised, it ushered in the era of courtroom television, turning trials into a form of public entertainment. The case also intensified debates about race in the American justice system. It exposed deep-seated racial tensions and differing perspectives on justice between communities. Many black people saw the acquittal as a balancing act after decades of injustice, while many white people viewed it as a miscarriage of justice. Perhaps the case's most positive legacy was its impact on awareness of domestic violence. Before the case, domestic violence was often seen as a private matter and rarely reported publicly. The detailed revelations about Nicole's abuse, including photos and 911 calls, shocked the public and shifted collective perceptions of the issue. The case transformed domestic violence from a taboo subject into a serious public health issue. This led to the passage of significant legislation to protect victims, including strengthening the Violence Against Women Act and improving police procedures for handling domestic violence cases. For O.J. Simpson himself, though he avoided prison for murder, his life was never the same. He lost most of his entertainment and sports career, as well as his reputation. In 2008, he was sentenced to 33 years in prison for armed robbery and kidnapping in a separate Las Vegas incident. He was paroled in 2017, but his reputation never recovered. The O.J. Simpson case remains a subject of study and debate in criminology, law, and sociology. It has become a case study on the intersection of fame, race, gender, and justice in modern American society.